What happened to the Clippers being up 3-1? Lakers now going to play against the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. Stay tuned for the next episode of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to episode 49 of Sideline Sports Podcast. I'm the host, Alex Naveja, and with me today is J.C. De Leon, the co-host for the HoopBall Lakers Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. J.C., again, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, not a problem. Glad to be a part of the show.
Well, JC, we have a lot to discuss about. Let's go straight to the business. I mean, Clippers, Nuggets. It was looking very good, very promising for the Clippers. First 4 games being up 3-1. And after that, it was just a train wreck downhill. Before I give my take, because I have a big take about what happened, what just went wrong for the Clippers in those next 3-4 games?
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. I think a lot of people were. I think that one of the episodes I recorded solo, I pretty much kind of anticipated that this would be the all LA series that we figured we would see for the last year. One thing Ethan Noroff is the other host of HoopBall Lakers, we constantly talk about, one of our favorite things about the Laker team is chemistry and how much it seems like they like each other. And right off the bat, from the interviews after the game, Paul George talked about chemistry issues. Kawhi mentioned chemistry issues. I think Doc did. Montrezl Harrell, a report has leaked out since then about an argument that Montrezl Harrell had with Paul George on the sideline of one of the games. Like, chemistry was a huge part of this team. And yeah, maybe they did the load management a little bit too much and didn't give this team time to gel on the court. But I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing that seemed to be the most obvious issue. If there were issues all year, was chemistry. And then sure enough, that's what it came down to.
Chemistry is a huge thing, especially when it comes down to winning ball games. Exactly. Chemistry goes along with trust. Can I pass you the ball and can I trust you in making this shot if you're wide open? And I really think if the team has no chemistry, you can't win games. So I think that's a huge, huge point as far as why the Clippers couldn't even get that final win to make history. But instead, it was history that was made against them, with the Nuggets coming from behind 3-1. My take on this, JC, is I think the Clippers got pretty big-headed as far as having that 3-1 series lead. And they already thought, hey, we got this in the bag already. We're up 3 games. I mean, the Nuggets can't do anything. And I think the Nuggets were fired up. Everybody on that team knew that the odds were against them. Everybody guessed that the Clippers were going to beat the Nuggets. And I think that really pumped up the Nuggets. And I think that's what got them fired up, get them to win 3 straight games, to come from behind and go to the Western Conference Finals, just like they did last season. They went to Game 7-2 against the Trailblazers, and that didn't result in their favor either. So I think the Clippers just really did fall off the map. And if we had to look at their last 3 game performances, it was the Nuggets that they went off. The offense just went off, and the Nuggets played excellent defense. And the thing is, the underrated duo now, Murray and Jokic. Nobody's talking about that duo. Everyone's saying James and AD and PG-13 and Kawhi Leonard. But no one's talking about this new duo that's coming up and that should be on there for top duos. And my final thing that I have to say is just the Clippers in the fourth quarter, or I should say the whole second half, they just look like they threw in the towel right then and there. They only scored 33 points, allowed 50 points for the Nuggets. Just not a good look for the Clippers.
Yeah, totally. 100% agree. And yeah, Denver has sort of kind of slid under the radar a little bit last year. They were coming, close to winning that game 7. And this offseason, they pretty much retooled, didn't really miss any players or lose any players, brought the same team back. So there's really no reason to expect why this team would be any worse off this year. The writing, I think, was kind of on the wall. Jokic came back from the coronavirus hiatus, way slimmed down, like looking like we've never seen him before.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, as much of a surprise as it is to people, maybe it really shouldn't have been.
Absolutely. I think this is an underrated team, a sleeper team that people didn't really think was going to go deep into the playoffs. But looking again at this Game 7 numbers, you look at that duo of Leonard and Paul George. They only scored 24 points as that duo, and that's unlike them. They usually at least score in together at least 40, 50 points around there together. But you look at the scoring leader in that night, it was Montrezl Harrell who was the scoring leader. He was carrying the team on his back. And look at Kawhi's numbers. 6 for 22 field goal range, 2 for 7 on the three-point line. And then you look at PG-13, 4 for 16 from the field goal range, and then 2 for 11 from the three-point line. And the Clippers only shot 38% field goal range and only 26% from the three-point line. Can't be happening. Can't be. That's not championship basketball mentality. And those last 3 games that they lost, it just looked like the Nuggets had all the mojo and they just played every minute out like that was their last one.
Yeah, like to take Kawhi out of his game was the most brilliant step Denver could have done. Like all season long, every time I watch the Clippers, it's Kawhi taking a couple of dribbles to shoot a mid-round turnaround J, and it's unstoppable. And I think just from that shot alone, he's got to shoot like 60% from the field. Like he doesn't miss turnaround mid-range fade, and to take that weapon away from him was amazing.
Kawhi Leonard is maybe the best fourth quarter scorer, and not a single noise came from Kawhi Leonard from that fourth quarter last night. It was dead silent. Not even Paul George wasn't even there. It was Harold, like we talked about, was making all the noise. But I don't know if you saw this, JC, but maybe it's only me, but I don't know if you saw that fadeaway three-pointer that Jamal Murray took. That looked just like the three-pointer that Kawhi took almost a year ago against the 76ers. I thought that was a straight diss. Like Murray just fade away, went in there. It was just looked like Kawhi last year. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. And it's one of the moments where I think the game wasn't 100% set. Like it was maybe 95% set. That's one of those shots during a game that gets hit and where it's like, okay, there's no coming back from that. If they're going to hit that, there's no way.
It was just like the NBA spirits were just telling them, hey, this is Nuggets basketball, baby. This is their year. This is them. They're going to beat that dog that originally was saying that they were going to win this series. So now J.C. Clippers, they're going to have to, go home a little early. Going to be a long flight for them. What do you think is going to be their next move? I mean, I know a lot of people are disappointed that this was supposed to be Kawhi's legacy of him carrying this LA team to their first championship and even to create that history to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think we'll see how deep-rooted those chemistry issues were, because my first instinct was, well, this team's not coming back as is next year. If there were this many problems chemistry-wise this early, some big pieces that are free agents next year. Paul George is a free agent in the offseason. Montrezl Harrell is a free agent. And those right off the bat, those are the 2 that I mentioned that seemed to have an issue a couple of games ago. If you are one of the NBA conspiracy theorists out there, Montrezl Harrell is a clutch client. And so perhaps that could mean something for the Lakers. But yeah, I mean, they've got to retool something. Like the Clippers are obviously very close. Maybe they will bring it back. Maybe they won't. They're obviously not that far away. Maybe if you can turn a Paul George into 2 or 3 really proactive role players, that might be a better addition by subtraction. Kind of like how the Miami Heat sort of got rid of Hassan Whiteside and turned and got, I think, 3 pieces out of that Miami is obviously doing really well, having gotten rid of Hassan Whiteside. And so that might be what the Clippers need to do.
Heat on their way to a potential return back to the NBA Finals there. But final question of the half, you potentially thinking that PG-13 will go to the Lakers, change uniforms?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much money he'll command but in a way, it is kind of an ideal scenario for him. I think it could turn the Lakers into a big three, in which your number three obviously would then be Paul George. You wouldn't have necessarily the worries in the playoffs that have come from him playing. He for whatever reason tends to underperform in the playoffs a little bit, and he's done that as a 1 or a 2 on his teams. If he's a 3, if he's the number 3 option on a team, maybe that might solve the problem.
Well, there you have it, folks. Clippers falling short in the semifinals of the Western Conference playoffs. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our predictions. We're going to talk about that Denver Nuggets matchup against a Lakers team waiting for the Nuggets. We'll go ahead and step aside. I'm Alex Naveja, again, from Sideline Sports Podcast, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. We'll be right back.
Kyra Boncho Smith, hip-hop artist and men's basketball player, and you're watching Sideline Sports Podcast.
And we're back here on Sideline Sports Podcast. I'm the host, Alex Naveja, and again, with me today is J.C. De Leon. He is the co-host for the HoopBall Lakers Podcast. First half, we're talking about what went wrong for the Clippers against the Denver Nuggets. And now here in this second half, we're going to talk about the Lakers. Now, they're playing in the Western Conference Finals, and they're playing against the Nuggets. But before that, Lakers had to face off against a very tough, very good three-point shooting Houston Rockets team in the semis, and it resulted into a 4-1 Lakers advancing. Now, JC, what were your thoughts on this series? I know this is a much different series than the Trailblazers.
Yeah, going in, there was a few examples of when the Lakers had played the Rockets in this revamped small ball philosophy of theirs, and it didn't seem like it would go easily for the Lakers, as easily as it ended up being. The small ball Rockets are extremely fast. They play really good defense. They're definitely not an easy out, despite how the series ended up being. And you've always got James Harden being a dangerous scorer, and Russell Westbrook, as streaky as he is, he can definitely be dangerous. And so, yeah, I'm definitely happy with how the Lakers ended up being and how they adjusted and proved the versatility of their lineups, which is one thing we talk about on our show a lot, is how versatile this lineup is. They can play pretty much any style, and they showed it. And Houston really only had the one style because they're limited in personnel and limited in size.
I like the way the Lakers played against the Rockets. I mean, it just seemed as though that the Rockets really depended a lot on their long balls and just trying to depend on the three-point shooting. But as the saying goes, if you live by the three, you die by the three too. So, I mean, if you always depend on the three-point shot, I mean, you got to expect the other team to adapt and figure out how to stop shooting behind the perimeter, how to stop that team. So I just think the Lakers actually ended up just figuring that out, and the Lakers played some really good selfless basketball, and that looked so nice. There were so many possessions that the Lakers were able to swing the ball around. They were able to find the open man. They even got their three-point shooting going as well. Not as good as the Rockets, because the Rockets are just that good in the three-point shooting. It just seemed as though everybody in their starting five and even players coming off of the bench can shoot threes. And I didn't learn that until I really went into the series and really studied the Rockets. Wow, this team is dangerous behind the three-point line. And I have to say, Eric Gordon wasn't somebody that was talked about too much, but Gordon is such a dangerous three-point shooter in the league. I mean, everyone was targeting Harden and Westbrook. Great idea, but it was Gordon that I felt as though that was really stepping up behind the three-point line and getting those open looks.
Yeah, Eric Gordon's been one of my favorite. A lot of people call him a role player. I think in a certain in the right situation, and the Rockets certainly is for him. He's a legit number three, and he can turn a team. He can be a big three, part of a big three for a team. He plays really good defense. He's a good shooter. He just needs the opportunities.
And I think the Rockets can continue to find him those opportunities. I still see him as a real great asset to the Rockets. And looking at that series, again, Lakers falling short in game one, just like they did against the Trailblazers. And then they would take the next four: 117, 109 game two, 112, 102, 110 to 100, and then 119 to 96 to finally execute the Houston Rockets. Now, Lakers got to face off against a team that has positive momentum moving forward, that definitely has the mojo to be able to keep up with the Lakers. Now, here's another one that I think a lot of people, it's going to be the same thing. People are choosing Lakers, but then the Nuggets are listening, and they're going to use those odds to their favors again. What are you thinking for this series now for the finals, or for the Western Conference final?
Yeah, in a way, I'm glad that the Lakers are facing this team in the conference finals, because at this point now, Denver can't sneak up on anybody. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I think part of, we talked about the Clippers' big head. I think it's really hard to come back from 3-1 down, and they did it in the first series. And so I'm sure all of the odds were against them doing it twice in the same playoff run. So even less likely so it happening a third time. So you got to imagine, if the Nuggets are going to win this thing, they're going to win it outright from the get-go. And so it's really important, especially how the Lakers have come out in a little lackluster in game ones of both rounds, especially after a long rest. I think if the Denver gets out front, then they're going to be kind of dangerous. So game one was going to be a definite must-win against the Clippers, if that was going to be the case, just because the Clippers are so tough. I think it's even more so now, just because of how Denver can run with momentum.
Absolutely. We were talking about it before. Lakers lost their game ones against both the Trailblazers and the Rockets. That's not going to be the case here against the Nuggets. You have to come in here and you have to win game one, because the Nuggets already won 3 straight. So you got to stop that. If you crush their positive momentum moving forward, then that's going to bring their confidence down. And that's the key to it. You got to stop this confidence that the Nuggets have. And you know what? You got to stop that new duo. I think LeBron and AD, they're going to have to figure out a way how to stop this new duo of Murray and Jokic, because they're both dangerous. And I mean, who knows what's the next pass that Jokic is going to create? That one in the fourth quarter, he just had the ball, just threw it over his head like that. Like, he knew what he was doing, but it just looks like the thing you would do from, like, when you're playing like pickup basketball in the park or something.
Yeah, for him to do that in the fourth quarter the game was pretty much set at that point. But yeah, he does stuff like that, and it sort of seems like he's showboating, but it's just what he knows how to do. It's like how Chris Paul can dribble between a guy's legs. He's not doing it to show off. It's just he can do that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think Jokic is just he's a well-balanced player. Like, he can shoot behind the arc. You put him in the paint and take him on one-on-one. He'll come in with a nice hook shot, or he'll come in with a nice little Magic Johnson, little Kareem hook shot there. And he's just a well-balanced player. He finished off the Clippers in a triple-double. I mean, completely out-rebounding anybody that was on the floor yesterday. I believe he had 20 boards yesterday. So I am really excited to see that rebound battle and the battle of the bigs with AD and with Jokic. What do you think?
Yeah, it's AD has had really great games against Denver this year. The Lakers are 3-1 against Denver. Their one loss being a game in which LeBron was either resting, or not sure if he was hurt, but he didn't play the one game that they lost to Denver earlier this season. So yeah, Anthony Davis, he matches up well with Jokic. He's proven that he can get his points. And Jokic, from game to game, he's pretty. I think he sort of lets the game come to him. There'll be some nights where he's going to be the guy to score 30, and other nights where it'll be Jamal Murray. And so, yeah, it's going to be hard to kind of anticipate what they'll do game to game in that sense. But history-wise, it's definitely on the Lakers side.
How about the addition of Rajon Rondo? I mean, Rondo wasn't there to play against the Blazers, but him being here against the Rockets, what a huge asset it was to have Rondo.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I liked about last series is, as great as LeBron is, he's definitely getting up there in age. I still think he's the best player in the league, but he's gonna night to night not gonna be the guy. And so one of the things I liked about that Rocket series is there were two games in which Rondo played brilliantly, and he was playoff Rondo just like we thought. And there was a couple of games where LeBron didn't score a lot of points, but he didn't need to because Rondo was stepping up that game, or Rajon Rondo or Anthony Davis would step up, or Kuzma a different game. So they're going to need some of that because that's kind of what Denver is going to bring you. I guarantee there's going to be one game in which Paul Millsap, who hasn't done a lot in the playoffs, he's going to do a lot in the next round just because he's that vet, he's that smart, he's that good still. So yeah, there'll be one game where there's going to be a Paul Millsap game. There'll be a Jokic game, or a couple of Murray games. There'll probably be a Gary Harris game. Like, you got to look out for those things.
You also got to put Porter in that option, in that equation as well, because Porter is one of those underrated players that could definitely do some damage against the Lakers. Now, one question that I have for you is, what are your predictions going into this series?
I mean, I'll definitely give Denver their due, and hopefully the Lakers will as well, and not sort of overlook this team. I'd probably still go Lakers in 6. I think a nice hard-fought 6, just because of how versatile both teams are. I think superstar for superstar, LeBron and AD versus Jamal and Jokic, they might kind of cancel each other out, and so from there it's going to be the other role players. Like I mentioned, Rondo's going to have a couple of games where he's playoff Rondo. Kuzma is going to have to step up big, and he has before. He hit that game-winning shot against Denver here in the bubble a few weeks ago. And Kuzma's been playing great off the bench, playing great defense, doing what he needs to do. He's not always going to score a lot, but I think he understands that. And this is also going to be a series where the bigs come back into play. They didn't get any playing time at all, hardly, in the against the Rockets. So JaVale and Dwight Howard are going to be important.
Those bigs are going to be well rested. And two guys I felt like they deserve some credit from the Lakers too is KCP. That guy was excellent behind the three-point line, and that's what you need him to be. You need him to be that three-point support that the Lakers, they need a lot of help with. They going into the bubble, they were atrocious behind the three-point line. It looked like when they went into the Blazers series, they improved a little bit, and then when they went to the Rockets series, they improved a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see if the three-point shooting improves even more. And the second player that I wanted to mention is Danny Green. Danny Green was somebody that did not much against the Blazers. Comes into the Rockets series, they give him some more touches, and is able to shoot the three-pointer, and he was able to improve in his three-point shooting. So I want to see some more of Danny Green, and I want to see some more of KCP. And the good thing about the Lakers is they have a lot of guys that they can turn to. They can't just go with the starting 5. And how can we forget the Caruso? This guy is so huge. Like, this guy is always putting up a show night in, night out. So I think Caruso is also going to be somebody that's going to come up big, always comes off of the bench, bringing in some pretty good high energy. If he comes up and just launches and goes for a dunk, that's going to just have the whole entire Lakers bench going bananas out there. But I think the Lakers are going to have a nice balance. I still say the Lakers are going to go to the NBA Finals. I think they're going to do it in 5. I really think they're going to do it in 5. I think the Nuggets will have one game, but then knowing how versatile the Lakers are, I think they'll figure it out. They have so many guys.
Yeah, and other advantages are the Nuggets have played 14 really intense games to the Lakers, relatively easy 10 games. And that's sort of one thing that people thought was to the Blazers' disadvantage, is that they played so many intense games in the seeding, and then to get to the playoffs, that they were exhausted by the time they got there. Kind of the same for the Rockets. And so, yeah, I think momentum, adrenaline, it could give Denver the edge in game 1, just like how the Lakers that keep losing games 1. But yeah, it could easily go 5. I'm being a little cautious, and hopefully the Lakers are too, and saying 6.
I still like the game 6, then finishing it off. but just seeing how well that they're playing, and they're getting the additions of both JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, I think those are going to be great additions for them. And those are additional big men that can take on both Millsap and Jokic. So that's how the Lakers will win more, get more boards, more opportunities, and just get the shooting going early on in the game. Don't waste any time. I know Lakers can be a good first quarter team. You have to be an excellent fourth quarter team, and they've shown that. And they have to be consistent on that, and have to be consistent on their shots. But JC, that's all the time we have left today. Thank you so much for being on the show. I mean, It was an absolute pleasure. And you know what? We wish you nothing but the best of luck with the show, with HoopBall and the Lakers podcast.
Yeah, you as well.
Thank you so much, JC, for being on the show. If you guys liked this episode of Sideline Sports Podcast, please give this episode a thumbs up. If you guys are enjoying the content, I mean, SoCal sports is just so hot right now. I mean, like Lakers, Dodgers, the Padres, Angels, a lot going on right now. And of course, MLS soccer. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. We're getting a lot of great guests like JC De Leon coming onto the show week in and week out. And I'll make sure to put JC's social media handles down in the description below, so you guys can also follow him and also follow the Lakers podcast from hoopball.com. So I'll put the website down in the description as well. So again, JC, pleasure to have you on the show.
Absolutely, man. It was a great time. Thank you.
And of course, if you're not on the sideline, it's not a Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all SoCal sports. Have a good one, everybody. And of course, enjoy the Western Conference Finals.